Are exponentially higher than the United States. Drug development doesn't come out of these countries, but guess what? People who don't have to pay, even if they're in countries where they're paying 60% income tax, right, and they can't afford a car like in Denmark because the tax is so overwhelming, so they all drive old gay Passats. They think that their healthcare is better because they see it as free. Don't be fooled by the rankings that list our healthcare lower than other countries because of subjectivity and people saying that they like their healthcare more. And that tricks a lot of young Americans to go, well, hold on, socialism must be doing it right. It's a lie, it's not true, you don't have to buy it, cut that shit off at the pass. Thank
you. One thing that I've heard in this regard, let's see, about healthcare is just that when you compare apples to apples, when you compare, say, how Japanese people in Japan do to Japanese people in America, it looks a lot better for America. But that should be expected because it's going to be a very special group of people who come to America. It's not going to be your average person who immigrates. But nevertheless, that is a bit of a gotcha point to make, is that people say that American healthcare outcomes are so much worse. But when you do a comparison of nationality to nationality in their home countries versus America, America looks very good.
Events, James Allsup being banned off YouTube and Twitter, and Vincent James being demonetized, you don't seem to have the same anti-tech censorship vigor. If you oppose tech censorship, will you strongly advocate against the censorship of these individuals specifically? And would you consider having Nick Fuentes on your show to talk about where
here we go, the Nicker Nation
online the most?
Well, listen, I appreciate the question. I'm not really familiar with Nick Fuentes, so I can't promise that I would have him on the show, and I have no idea why he was removed. I do know that when I see it with people where it's unfair, for example, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard or we saw it with Dave Rubin, we've done everything we possibly can in our power to defend them. There's been no one at the front lines more than us. But there are also some people who get removed who have smaller channels that we don't necessarily even know about. So I can't answer the question because I'm not familiar with Nick Fuentes. I've had some people ask me in the past if I will defend folks who've actually violated terms of service by doxing people. I have no idea if he's done that. I assume that he probably hasn't. But anytime somebody is simply being targeted and silenced because of their opinion, regardless of how unpopular it may be, yeah, I don't think that people should be deplatformed. But I don't want to answer regarding someone who I'm not necessarily familiar with, but I appreciate your question. The spirit of it remains the same. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Crowder.
Thank you. And by the way,
Interesting
I will
punt
say,
from Crowder here.
I will defend your right to wear that Hawaiian shirt out in public and not get your ass kicked. It takes brass balls to wear a Hawaiian shirt.
Right, so yeah, he just punts, basically. I'm surprised, though. I'm surprised, if this is actually live, and I think it is, I'm surprised that the Crowder didn't have more of an answer ready.
Oh,
So,
named after a strong man, Andrew Breitbart.
Yeah. So on Monday, I was watching your video about Kanye when he was talking about pornography and everything like that. And I know. But
That's all I got. That's my Kanye West impression.
one of the biggest things I've seen for my time in college, I've been here for 5 years, so whoop to that. But go chemical
Wait,
engineering.
you've been here for
but-
5 years?
Yes.
Are you getting your master's?
No.
Okay. Okay. And what's funny is he has the A&M, he has the college shirt. Ladies and gentlemen, Bluto Blutarski is here to ask a question.
I know. But
7 years of college down the drain. It's okay.
the life of an engineer, you know.
We all have hiccups.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So.
But it's okay, you're white. They'll let you skate through. Oh, so you guys didn't know? Well, you thought we had to take tests? No! You swipe our white privilege card.
So hey, Super High T, hey Fletcher, hey Eternal Fisherman, hey Hello Whites. How's everyone doing?
So the biggest things that I've been seeing lately, just through my time in college, is this huge like push for like sex and drugs and everything like that. So like impure stuff. And as a Christian, I am constantly like fighting for this, like against it, and trying to live in the life of purity. So my question
You're
is,
also fighting your own biology.
I know.
That's tough. It's the
I know.
hardest thing.
So, how do you be pure in this time?
Whew, that's a pretty broad question. It may be a very thin question. I have no idea. But
Yeah, not a dramatic question. Yeah, just not a knicker apparently. Super High T. Yeah, Fletcher. So what I think that they believe is that basically conservatives are gatekeepers. That would be Steven Crowder included, and so yeah, they believe that. Oh, let's see if I can get this going. They believe the conservatives are essentially gatekeeping and damaging the movement, so to speak. That's the Nick Fuentes position, basically. Yeah, I was muted, but I shouldn't be muted now, Super IT. I think you're a little bit behind.
it's very difficult. And this is one. And listen, I'll say this: you're a good-looking chap. Aside from the 5 years in college, I assume. Hey, I'm gonna make a lot of money.
I can see my audio. Yeah, I can see my audio bar moving, so I can't be muted. Yeah, that was a boring question. Let's see.
I was fine when he talked about chairs. Oh my God. Did you know there's another Joker there? I had no idea. That is testicle retractingly scary, to use a term from Patton Oswalt. I think he coined that. Maybe afterwards we can break a pool cue and you can have tryouts. That would be great. Okay, this will be the last question. And it is pretty broad, so I hope that I can be of service to you here. Listen, the reason I say you're a good-looking guy is because I know how many people here identify as Christians. Oh wow, that's a lot of them. Okay, we could have been doing a Kanye service right here. Ha! Yeah, I'm gonna tell you what high fashion done for me. Ha! Shut up.
Anyone listen to Kanye's new album?
I'm really glad that Kanye has come out, and I think he can influence a lot of people. The reason I
Let's
say
see.
you're a good-looking guy, you seem to have your stuff together, is there's this sort of stereotype of Christians who wait until they're married, who don't have sex, because they don't.
I saw Bob Lazar's Joe Rogan interview, Josh. It was something to behold. He seems like a bit of an odd duck. The more interesting thing is the UFO sightings by the Navy, where they seem to have these signatures that they don't understand or don't recognize. But I really don't know what to make of it. I suspect that it's like typically what happens in these cases is that it's drastically overstated.
I felt like it was pretty important for me to talk about that So other people out there who were struggling with it understood, and they understood that there were people out there who weren't being abstinent by choice, right? And here's the thing.
Oh, I see
Everyone
what's
raised
happening.
Their hand as far as Christians, and a lot of you are young, right? How many here are actual virgins?
That's a funny moment. How many here are virgins, and then everyone claps for them. Kind of like a parody of itself.
No. No. Because I'm looking at a lot of beautiful faces. Oh, that one lady right there in the red, she went, shh, you. Listen, if that's true, great. Okay, hold on a second. Are you guys like Bill Clinton virgins? Like, depends on what the definition of is, and you're using a cigar as a humidor and some kind of, is that like, all right, if you guys are all virgins, listen, I will say this, I would not see that amount of hands.
Fletcher, do you have a link to him calling for mass downvotes of Crowder's stream? That would be interesting to look at.
I got into a heated argument with Amy Schumer on Red Eye over it. And did anyone ever see that argument with Amy Schumer? Okay. I remember at the time I felt really embarrassed. And the reason I felt embarrassed was because she went after me really hard personally. And I remember thinking, man, you know, if I don't volley back here, I'm a bad comedian. But if I do and I just make it personal, I'd be a bad Christian. And it was really tough. I remember I got off I left Red Eye and I got on the phone with my pastor. I'm like, man, I don't know, what should I have done? Because I don't want to seem like a stick in the mud, but I also want to be authentic about who I am. You know, we hear be real, but people always want you to be real until you're actually being authentic in a way that's uncomfortable. And, you know, I'd been in stand-up clubs where people could be up there pantomiming.
Yeah, that's a good point by Crowder here.
Donkey shows from Mexico and horrible shit. And I'd be like, yeah, I don't have sex. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, Fletcher, I think that you should expect there to be downvotes from Nick's viewers, just because this is like a Conservatism Inc. Figure. So even if Nick does not tell people to downvote, they're going to be downvoting. That's kind of the energy of the crowd right now.
Correct.
Yeah. Patrick No Jews Allowed is upset about the exclusion of his movement, his free speech movement.
At my house. And my neighbor was a sex offender, and that's not a joke. So as a Christian, I want to be really clear. And sometimes, listen, I know I go too far. I can be rough around the edges. Sometimes I have a potty mouth. I get it. The reason that I do that is just because I feel like if I start censoring myself, it becomes church where people aren't honest about their flaws. People aren't honest about their sins. Doesn't mean that sin and flaws should be glorified. I don't think that at all. I don't think if I use a naughty word or if I make a joke that's inappropriate that it's something that should be glorified. Sometimes I just can't help it, and I feel ashamed. I'm like, but it's so funny though. And half the time my dad's like,
That's an interesting topic brought up by Super High T. How long will Fuentes last? I think it depends on how close he flies to the sun from now on.
as bluntly as I possibly can, is because I want people out there to not feel alone. It is a very difficult struggle. Listen, a young man with your hormones raging, I see you looking at your watch right now. I don't know where you gotta be. I imagine it's a laptop with the doors closed. No! Don't shame him! Do not shame him! Start a small group, become his accountability partner, hide all the Lubriderm. No, I know you're open about this.
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
like most
so
people
what I'm saying
are.
is, okay, let's be honest. Have you struggled with pornography?
Yes, and I'm open to
How
saying
many
that.
guys here have struggled with pornography? Yeah, this is one thing I talk about. There you go. Well, hold on a second. he's standing up. He's like, me! Yeah! Oh my God! It's not a struggle? Porn kills love. Okay. I can't read your T-shirt. I just saw you here. I just saw you stand up at porn. And that's one thing too at church, right? At church, you see, we've talked about this with Kanye. People go up and they talk about who's freed you from your sins? And people go up and they say, I was addicted, to heroin. And everyone's like, and they're praying on them and they're holding snakes.
Yeah, unfortunately, this Q&A involves a lot less Q and a lot more A. Fletcher says, he doesn't talk about the USS Liberty enough, so he needs to be mass downvoted. Agreed. Everyone should only talk about the USS Liberty and nothing else. Otherwise, it's not real free speech. Real free speech is talking about dancing Israelis in the U.S. as liberty until the sun falls.
Cannot avoid. You don't have to go looking for this problem. It's innate. We're hardwired to like sex. Listen, naked ladies are good looking. I have one. It's great.
Some very reluctant cheers there.
It's so easy to prey on people with pornography. And so people aren't nearly, I think I was talking with Gerald G. Morgan Jr. about this at his church, where they had these sort of small groups like.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Might move on to a different stream just because it's too much A, not enough Q. There's not going to be a lot of room for disruption, at least, as far as I can see. Maybe people link me back here if it does turn out to be interesting. But in the meanwhile, let's see what Josh has sent us. Let's assume that Josh has sent us something real good. What has he sent us?
Good day, everybody.
Oh,
Welcome
this guy.
to Rebuilding the Truth. I am John Turpa, your host, and today we're going to be talking about Bob Lazar's hand scanner.
So Bob Lazar was this dude who basically he worked at this Area 51 facility for a while, and he talked about like multi-dimensional spacecraft and weird black holes and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Let's see if there's anything. Oh. Nope. Let's see if I can get that going.
See this. And he didn't feel like he was going to be able to see this again. To see this particular... that is the hand scanner from the movie. So...
Yeah, he just seems to be talking about like a bunch of he brings up a bunch of alien technology supposedly, including hand scanners and all sorts of stuff like that. Let's see. What I might pivot to is let's see if Crowder is heated up at all. No.
May not be the abstinence. I can't get close to you. Could be body odor. My point is, I have no idea. I assume it's not.
The same question. Same questioner. It's been on the same questioner for like 15 minutes. Yeah. But maybe I'll just talk about the recent Twitter drama. So, one thing I need to do is I need to plug my Discord, folks. So anyone who wants can come on my Discord and chat with me live and get on the stream. So I'm going to invite people here, and this is a link. So, right. Let's see.
Failure is always an option. As a matter of fact, failure is often the easiest, most readily available option. Don't live your life where you simply walk through easy door.
One thing we could do is review a video that was posted on my Discord earlier. See if I can find it. Here he is. Copy. And we'll paste it here. This guy seems to be like a Zoomer type.
So that would be maybe we've come to three categories: people who say they hate it, but they ultimately ignore it, don't do anything. This is the vast majority of people, I think. There are people who really hate white men, know that this is evil, and they want to hurt white men. They want to emasculate white men. They want to decrease the agency of white men. They want to decrease the men sterile, neutered, passive. So they...
In general, men, though, right? Is it ever isolated entirely to white men? I think I see the same sort of thing play out in communities of color. Toxic masculinity is not a concept isolated to white men.
I think this is a good thing. And then maybe there's a third category. Maybe the mother herself thinks this is a good idea. Maybe she's delusional, she's crazy, whatever. I think there is a category of people who really genuinely believe that transitioning is the right thing to do at age 7. So you have these three categories of people who say they hate this thing and they won't do anything, people who are activists, who are pushing it forward, who hate white men, people who are activists, who are pushing it forward, or passively supporting it, who think it's really a good thing. So you have those three groups of people. And then maybe there is a fourth group of people, which is very small, which sort of is like the first group in the sense that they are neither haters of white men, they're neither resentful of white men, nor are they nor are they passively thinking this is a good thing. These are people who understand the consequences of transitioning. They understand the suicide risk. They understand all the psychological trauma that goes with this. They understand it's a bad thing, right? But they're not under the delusion. They're not under the illusion that something is going to change. They are not the type of person to make threatening statements. They're not the type of person to threaten violence. They're not the type of person to threaten activism. They're not the type of person to believe that change is possible within this system. So that type of person, you can call a defeatist, you can say is black-pilled, you can say whatever about them. But honestly, I would prefer to be in the fourth category than any other. And I think the only two legitimate categories are people, in terms of when I say legitimate, I mean honest. I mean, if you honestly hate white men and you're trying to chemically castrate them, I don't share your sentiment.
I wonder why. Yeah, I wonder why. Well, and presumably he's of the in the camp that separates out Jews from white people, and in that case, I wonder why he thinks that these things are just isolated to Gentiles, right? Like, because they aren't. These attacks on masculinity are not Gentile specific, and they reach across communities. They reach to the extent that they're not infiltrating other communities. It's simply a matter of time, not a matter of lack of intent. And that's an odd thing, is that there's this consistent presumption of hyper agency on the part of our overlords, that first of all they have a malintent in line with our ideology, with our way of looking at the world, when the majority of these people don't look at the world these ways. The majority of people do not consider Gentiles a particularly important category. They see people of color and people who and privileged people, which often expands with amazing readiness to include Asians, Chinese, people. Anyone who's doing well gets expanded into the fold. Anyone who's doing badly gets considered a person of color. And so that's not the way that people look at the world. The way that these lefties look at the world does not really put much importance on the concept of a Gentile.
But what you're doing is logical. What you're doing makes sense. What you're doing is self-consistent, and you have an understanding of the gravity of the situation. You're not living in la la land. You understand the harmful effect, and you're pushing it on people. So there is like truth in that position. That when you say, yeah, you know what, I hate white men, and I hope we castrate them all, because to hell with them. That is a self-consistent position. It might be an evil position, it might be a hateful position, a resentful position, but it is an honest position. The position that, it's a good thing, that's not an honest position. That is a fake position. That is a position based on lies and deceit and, nonsense. But it's also to say that
Well, they mean it in both cases. Oh, what's going on? Oh, hey, Luke. Good to see you here. What's going on here? Oh. Well, I'll assume that he deserved to be hidden. Yeah, so I'm reviewing the YouTube video of this fellow. He seems like he has an interesting channel. Some people posted it on my Discord, and that's why I saw it.
I'm going to do something about this, or something's going to happen, or we can't take this anymore. To put up all this phony anger and this phony, and it's not to say that you don't hear a story like this and you feel anger because you imagine, well, what if my own son was being stolen from me by a crazy woman and forced to be mutilated and castrated? So there is a sense of immediate anger that I can sympathize with. But when you take that and then you make it into a political thing and you say, we have to do something about this, and therefore you have to vote for Donald Trump, and if you don't vote for Donald Trump, you're enabling this. Wait a second, now you've gone into la la land. Now you've gone into a ridiculous territory, because this is happening under Trump, and a second term is not going to change Trump's attitude toward these sort of things. It's not going to change the Republican attitude. What we have to understand is there is a monoparty. The monoparty is liberal capitalism. We are governed by capitalism. It's not just our economics, but it's our foreign policy. We sell foreign policy to the highest bidder. We are a mercenary force for the biggest lobbyists. So if the biggest lobbyists in American politics are Sheldon Adelson and, on the one hand, and then George Soros on the other hand, you're going to have a foreign policy that's going to be convoluted and complicated and incoherent. But ultimately, the coherence comes from follow the money trail. Where's the money? Where's the money coming from? So, if Sheldon Adelson is a one-issue lobbyist, essentially, a political donator, then his interests are going to be served.
Hey, Elizer. Good to see you. Good to see you back. So we're at the moment reviewing a video by Kenneth Brown. You can check out his YouTube channel. And he seems to be, essentially I would call him black-pilled. He seems to be like an articulate black-pilled individual That seems to be his primary ethos.
To one extent. And to the extent that George Soros is a lobbyist and a donator, his interests are going to be served. Now you can say, well, this doesn't make sense. This isn't an American first, or this is not coherent from the perspective of the American people. But that's not we don't have an America first governance. We don't have some kind of like populist governance or nationalist governance, and we won't. There is no mechanism by which we get from A to B. When people say, oh, well, what about nationalist or populist revolutions in the past? Those happened in an extremely different time relative to that time period. Everyone is chemically castrated. Everyone is psychologically castrated in relation to that time. That time was a huge period of deprivation. That time was a period when people were having 8 kids on average. Maybe less than that. But, you look at the situation.
Sure, it was definitely a time when violence was much closer to the fore in terms of people's minds and in terms of people's competencies.
Italy in particular, very conservative, very traditional, very Catholic, also very communist. People don't realize this, but communism was huge in Italy. And part of the reason why the fascists were allowed, they were invited into power. They did not take over the government. They were invited into power by the powers that existed, the monarchy, because they wanted a bulwark against communism.
A lot of this is a white pill from a different perspective, right? And he makes this explicit. He says he's anti-materialist, or he sees the materialists, the merchants, as he calls them. He sees them as being the enemy, the fundamental evil. And so he's mentioning all the ways in which modern capitalism is resilient. And it's, I think, the kind of thing that I've said on the show from the other perspective, right? He's saying this is the case and this is bad, but I think it's accurate. Things, the powers that be, the people who were gatekeepers had a very different vision, and a much more anti-capitalist vision in the past.
They saw it as the lesser of two evils. Today, there is no threat of communism. Communism has been defeated. So there is no reason for the elites to ever support fascism because there is no left-wing threat. The threat of communism was that communism said, we're going to come in, we're going to kill all the rich people, and we are going to institute rule by bureaucrat.
I think I said exactly this about a year ago on Luke Ford's stream. There was a lot of pushback.
By mid-level bureaucrats will rule over the whole system. People like Stalin. And this really scared the elite. You do not have that kind of existential threat today. There is no communism. There is no one who is promising to kill the elites. There are people promising to kill white children and white middle-class people and racists and sexists and bigots and homophobes. But the rich and the elite are completely free from criticism. They're never the target. The target is always people who are out of power, not people who are in power. So there is no such thing as communism anymore. That has...
Here I think he's falling victim to blackpilling and underestimating the vulnerability of the rich, which is not something that I'm happy about. People are very happy to call the rich evil, call the rich extractive, which is precisely what he's doing. People are very willing to accuse productive people of being the source of all their ills, because in theory the productive people have the power to give, to magnanimously give everything away. And so the difference between what they could be doing for you and what they are doing for you is maximized the more productive someone is. And so this is what fundamentally leads to resentment by unproductive people, and even by productive people to a huge extent. They resent what they could the loss in potential that's represented by other successful people. Even though, of course, in the aggregate, you're far better off with people trying to be as productive as possible.
Passed away, that has been defeated. It no longer exists. What people refer to as communism is never threatening to the elites, never threatening to the rich. It is always threatening to middle-class people, bourgeois, lower-class people, people who are maybe in a managerial position, but never who are truly dictating policy and power and governance and sovereignty. So if this is the situation, then there is no path from A to B. Unless there is something outside of our control, like something like some sort of systems collapse or whatever, there's some huge paradigm shift, but no one is capable of creating that individually. I think we have to understand.
That's actually amazing. The live stream that we were just watching apparently is now privated. I don't know what happened, but that had 26,000 viewers. Oh, okay. The stream ended. Did anything interesting happen on the stream before it ended? I guess the video was private because the history was always private. You could never watch because it has rewind disabled, I guess. And so it'll be private before the upload happens, if the upload happens, if you disable the rewind function. Because if not, then when you pause, when you close the stream, it just becomes a video and people can rewind. So if you want to disable rewind, then yeah. Okay. So it's literally just that. Okay, never mind. I was hoping for some sort of drama.
Understand these 4 types of people and these 4 attitudes and these 4 ways of thinking. We need to put them in their proper place. And we need to, I guess, first understand that there is a...
Warlord Pliskin says, rich people are not productive. Rich people own everything and enslave everyone. Well, if that were true, Pliskin, then when you kill the rich people, you would be awash in wealth. But what in fact happens to countries that kill the rich people is that they become enmeshed in dire poverty and dysfunction. And that's because rich people are actually rich roughly in proportion to the value that they add.
I guess the existential problem is not how do we get Trump into office, or how do we cause a crisis, because crises can be integrated. When you look at the state apparatus and the media apparatus is built not just to handle a crisis, but to profit from a crisis. So if someone were to take some violent action, the system would take that violent action. It would make it into a caricature. I mean, just look at what happened in Germany not too long ago. It's a caricature. It's horrifying. And the system promotes that. The system likes that. The system is in favor of that. The system, that is not a threat to the system. That is part of the Hegelian dialect of the system. So, the system exists as a thesis. There is this antithesis of the lone wolf or something like this. And then the synthesis is, we need even more censorship. We need even more control. We need even more of a monoparty to resist this kind of lone wolf not distraction, but a threat. And oftentimes these people, again, they never attack or harm rich people. They never attack or harm elite people. They're always...
It's principally because they're stupid and mentally ill. That's why they don't, put the knife at the heart of the system. It's because they're too dumb to understand what the heart of the system is, as befits people who throw their lives away. Now, anyone who's on the stream, you are welcome to join the Discord. The Discord is at the following link. I see we have some fresh viewers, so if you join the voice channel, you can hear me live, and you can join the channel and be on stream.
He's talking about, what does Kurt Doolittle talk about? He says, well, maybe we should take down the power grid. Well, every rich person has a backup generator. Backup generators are not extra. You can get a backup generator, but every single rich person has a backup generator. Every single rich person has some kind of plan B, whether it be...
Warlord Pliskin says, Iran got rid of their rich people, and now they are a global power instead of a U.S. colony. Amazing. It's an amazing view of what happened in the Iranian Revolution. Yeah, it was a spectacular success. Russia got rid of the U.S. puppets, and they are now a rich nation. Oh, wow, yeah. Spectacularly rich. Much richer than, say, Poland and the people who were more capitalist and integrationalist. Oh, Levi's welcome on stream. He can do as he pleases. Franz. Hi there, Franz. Good to see you. Good to see everybody.
A yacht or whatever. They can find shelter. They can find safety. They can find refuge. They can stockpile food more effectively. They can have better security, better defense than the average person. So in the case of a kind of a systems collapse, the rich are insulated, and the people who are targeted are working people living paycheck to paycheck, people living in apartments.
Right, that's the usual case in terms of like your typical collapses. It depends on the type, of course. There can be situations where there are pogroms against the rich, pogroms against certain classes, and so the rich aren't always isolated. They shouldn't assume themselves to be. But yeah, that's the tendency. There's this desire to believe in this, this boogaloo where everyone's going to be equal. It's just going to be about how many cans of beans you happen to have and how many cans of ammo you happen to have. That's nonsense, right? Actual survivalists, actual people who understand, what it takes to deal with catastrophe. They understand that savings are the most important thing. You want to have money. You want to have relationships. You want to be networked. That's the case even more in a civilizational collapse than it was before.
Complexes, people living in cities, people who are threatened by like a power grid collapse are not the rich, not the elite, not the policymakers and the power brokers, but it's the average person. So again and again and again, you see these people who threaten violence and who carry out violent acts. They're always hurting the people. And that is to the advantage of the system, because the system can always say, well, hey, look, we warned you about these people. They're crazy. They're going to come and they're going to hurt you. They are terrorists and they're going to hurt you, the people, not us, the elite. They never hurt us. They're only hurting you, and therefore give us more power to protect you. That is always the argument. That will always be the argument. So this is the situation. And I think we have to look honestly at this. The idea that there is, I guess, some kind of political solution, I think, is increasingly stupid. The idea that there is some kind of violent solution is increasing.
Yeah, stream's on, and the stream can hear you when you talk. And on the stream, you're listening to a different a different stream or a different audio stream from a different microphone. So it'll sound different. But if you're in the Discord and you want to talk, then listen to the Discord because that's going to be live instead of delayed by a few seconds. Starman is apparently online. So yeah, you can talk whenever you want.
Extremely stupid. So what does that leave you with? If you cannot fight the system with politics or
I'm
violence,
just blowing up the stream.
then what can you do? Well, you simply cannot fight the system in material means. You cannot change the politics of things as they are. In the same way that if we were living in North Korea, if you ask me what's the strategy to undermine the regime, there is no strategy. There is no solution. There is no possibility. People who waste their time, you could, any kind of game theory, you can look at a chess position and you can say, well, what's the perfect move? Well, there is no perfect move. You're in a lost position. You're going to be in checkmate in 3 moves, and there's no way to avoid that unless your opponent is just stupid, which the system is not stupid, but you're pretty much guaranteed to lose. So what do? Do you just spend all your time and energy pouring thought and planning into how to win a battle that you've already lost? Or do you say, I'm going to step out of the way? Think of it as a train. The system is a train, and you're a human being. Now, what people of action, men of action, what they'll say is, you have to jump in front of the train so we can slow that train down.
That was actually, I found that a very deep point about the lost chess position. He says, what happens is that you're put into a game where there is no winning move. And that's true, particularly when you're thinking about different goals. There are goals that will be impossible based on the game state, based on the state of play, for you to achieve. And I think that he's probably correct about his goals and the goals of his cadre being impossible to achieve. Obviously, I just don't share those goals. But from that perspective, yeah, it does seem like they've been plopped on a chessboard that's a few moves away from checkmate. Let's see.
So we can stop that train, so we can turn that train around. Doesn't that sound ridiculous? Because the train might slow down, and I would agree that Trump has slowed down a lot of these trends compared with Hillary. Is that ultimately a good thing? I don't think that accelerationism is a solution, because see, everyone's trying to solve the problem here. They're trying to solve a problem in this a very arrogant sense in which they've walked into a historical scene and they assume...
Okay, it looks like we got some new folks on the Discord. We have Ginga, and we have Super High Tea. If you guys want to talk, then just let me know. Say hello. Anything to say? Can you hear me? Whatever. Restarting the video.
There must be a solution. That is an arrogance. That is an arrogance to walk into a scene and say, "There's got to be, a way to get everything I want."
I was just watching Nick's stream right now, and my question is, did you record Crowder's stream? Because
No.
he's just made it private and everything.
Yeah, apparently what happened was,
No.
and I should have known this, what happened was that because it was set to not have the rewind feature, when you shut off the live stream, normally it turns into a video, but in this case it just turns into private. So it's not like the video was intentionally private. No, I did not. I would have to be recording it live, so no, I don't have anything.
Shut down the Groypers, that's what he wanted.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But,
he was panicking over the Groypers.
Oh, okay. So Nick was watching that live as well? Is Nick live now?
Yeah, he was watching it, but he wasn't showing it, because that would get copyright claimed.
Oh, yeah. Well, or it can be. I think that the DMCA rules are loosely followed. So are you a fan of Nick?
Yeah, I'm a fan of Nick. I'm not a Christian or anything like that, but I watch his streams, and I loved when the Groypers just go and make those fake conservatives getting panicked.
Right.
It's so fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For my part, I've publicly said I think that Charlie Kirk's positions seem relatively benign to me, as far as like most conservatives are. He seems to be to the right of like the Republican mainstream, but yeah. But obviously, from different perspectives, people can be impure, relatively speaking.
Mm-hmm.
See if.
Also remember the 6 Gorillion.
Yep.
Remember the 6 Gorillions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You better. Let's see what Nick Fuentes is doing. Hey, hello? Oh,
Yeah, watch him.
let's see.
What are these conservatives in name only that come up?
Sino. Conservatives in name only. I never heard that phrase before, actually. Only Republicans in name only. Let's see. Josh Randall says, the ruling class is no less than 500 years ahead of the rest of us. We have no chance. Right, they're the black pill. They're space aliens. Maybe even lizards. Is that Conops? No, that's not Conops, Fletcher. He sounds similar to Conops. Gingra. Sounds similar to Conops, but apparently is not Conops.
Sometimes that's not possible. That's not realistic. That is a dream. That is an aspiration, but it is not
You
possible.
guys watched the
So
Groypers like I think it was yesterday.
Yeah, like my stream
Was it
yesterday was mostly
yesterday? Yes.
reviewing the Q&A with TP USA Ohio, which apparently was
Turning Point.
re-uploaded
Yeah,
by
exactly,
someone else.
Exactly.
That was good. I
Yeah,
wish
yeah,
that
nice,
I wish
nice.
that the
And
other content
that
would be
got so
re-uploaded
mean.
as well.
Google dancing Israelis. They are so fucking good at dancing.
Right. Yeah. They were trying to get triggered,
Oh my god.
trying to get
What's
people triggered.
hilarious?
But it seemed like I don't know if you saw the review of that by
No, that
JF
was a
Gariepi.
good red pill.
by JF Gariepi, but I sort of concur.
You
I think
should have
that,
watched.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you should have watched Nick's live stream on D Live. So if you don't follow him there, go follow him on D Live. I watched the stream and it was hilarious. He was overdosing on white pills. It was so freaking amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't even imagine. I was lying in my bed watching it, and I was like going bananas over it. It was so freaking amazing, you know.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not surprised. I mean, this is the time for Nick to gloat. He's managed to accumulate a lot of viewers by this, but it does seem to be
Yeah.
getting a lot of heat. It does seem to be a way that attracts the maximum amount
It's
of heat
time
possible.
for us.
Time for you.
It's time for us to rise up. Time for Groypers to rise up.
Yeah, the Tradcath army led by the Hispanic anti-Hispanic to take over.
Yeah. Sure. I know. Where you putting a reference to the Destiny debate, or was it just a common reference to his background?
Yeah, so he's of Hispanic extraction, and he seemed really mad about that Matt Walsh guy attacking the El Paso shooter, which I thought was quite a spectacle. So someone who's Hispanic complaining about too harsh a denunciation of someone who murdered a bunch of Hispanics at a shopping mall. But yeah, that didn't seem to me to be the optics of victory.
I'm not well read on everything that has happened in America, though, because I live in
Where
Sweden.
are you from, roughly?
chaotic country,
Oh,
and,
Sweden.
I'm
Okay.
from Sweden. So that's why.
How did you get
I'm just
interested in
watching,
American politics?
Fun profile. I'm not interested in American politics actually at all, but
You just like
it's fun
the drama.
to watch because of this because of all the Donald Trump since the election before.
Right.
So he's like the.
Do you follow
culture
Destiny
war,
as well?
And he's nah, not as much.
Mm-hmm. He seems like
I'm just
one of the
interested in the fun stuff.
one of the better debaters and drama connoisseurs among the live streamers. I've been
I've seen
following him for a while.
Destiny debate. He's like the lowest IQ person who ever runs a debate stream.
Yeah, I don't like Destiny.
Yeah, he seems to come off really well in these debates, though. Especially with Nick, it was quite a brutal affair.
One of the funniest debates I watched with him was with Darth Dawkins, if you guys know him. Darth Dawkins, this Christian guy.
I did not see that.
I've been like trying. What?
I did not see that debate.
You haven't watched Darth Dawkins? You
No,
can
never heard of him.
No, but you know who it is.
No, I don't know
Whoa.
who it is.
Yeah, then you can guys search him up. Yeah, this guy Darth Dawkins, he's like in his, I don't know if he's in his 50s or 40s or anything, but I think he's a retarded Christian who can't really debate, because when you debate him, he's just going with his so kind of
We
word
cannot
traps,
evaluate.
and when he loses, he's just slingering around. What can I say?
Yeah, well,
You
that's how
guys
it usually
know him.
goes when you're trying to debate religion. If someone knows what they're doing, it's very hard unless you're just gonna say, I have my faith, and my faith
Exactly,
is
they are.
is
Yeah,
is just from my own conviction.
it's always the thing from him. How can you justify your non-belief? Like, how do you justify your position that God doesn't exist and so on? And you're like, how can you justify your belief that God exists?
I can just.
How can you prove it? Well, it's in book. Yeah, well, who is written the book God? And what's the proof of that? You have no proof. And then he's just going around to, I don't know, philosophical questions.
Yeah,
And then you will just get stuck there.
well,
If you
yeah,
aren't
you
like
just
an
have to
academic
understand
and you know all
the
this stuff.
prior. Like usually, a theory that doesn't have evidence is going to be wrong because there are so many possible permutations of reality
Exactly.
relative to the one that exists, and so you just have to understand that prior, and then the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
evaporates. But you had
Permutations of reality. That sounds like the stupid physics articles that say everything is true at once.
nope, that's not what it means. It's actually the opposite. It's that very few things can be true relative to the possibilities that exist, and that's a fact.
I mean, you gotta have your evidence to claim something. You gotta have something to touch on and take your eyes on. Have you ever seen God? No. So how do you know he exists? And then he says like, well, have you seen air? How do you know it exists? Or
Right.
yeah,
There's lots of ways that you can
any
have evidence that
stupid
something
example.
exists. All of your senses,
Yeah, exactly.
the authorities that you trust, and that's usually where things will come in. That they'll say that the authority of the Bible is more valid than the other authorities that one might use. But the issue is that it's an
Yeah.
isolated judgment call. So they don't make the same kind of judgment call when it comes to other ancient books, for example,
Yeah.
or other religions. They'll call those ridiculous, and so it's clear that it's an isolated claim of authority that doesn't have a base justification.
He
to
also, yeah. Sorry, he always say go and rant about this so-called quote unquote ultimate authority. He always asks the question: do you believe there's an ultimate authority over the truth?
Right.
And whether you say yes or no, he will win,
So
even if you know it's wrong.
How old are you?
I'm 17.
Okay, that explains it.
The young radical, the young, the young are radicalized by the Knicker Nation. Chris
Well,
IV says
well, me,
once a
myself,
lot of
I'm
people in
not
the
gonna
alt-right
follow
started
this.
seriously saying that you can't prove God doesn't exist, I realized things were going downhill. Well, it's interesting. I've seen the swings happen, and it seems like I recall like all these waves of debates back and forth, but there's always going to be a constant upwelling of young people who are religious because it's the religious that choose to reproduce, and so that's ultimately the best way to win the argument is to reproduce, and that's something that the atheists absolutely neglect.
Okay.
Anyway, Starman, do you have any desire to get into a religious debate, or do you just wanna move on to something else?
Well, I think the smarter religious debate is to pick which religion lets you send your dogs to heaven. I mean, if they say no, why believe in that?
Right, Wolfie better go to heaven. All right, Space MDCR. Okay. Oh yeah. There have been centuries of intelligent theists, says Space MDCR. Yeah, but the way that you can rescue the situation is to retreat into vagaries. So a vague statement in my mind is not even wrong. So if you can save your theory by making it vague, then you've taken it out of the realm of things that I care about. That's all that I would say to that. It's not even wrong. Let's continue with the James Younger stream. If you guys in the Discord want to follow along with the video, the best protocol we have so far is just to unpause when I unpause, roughly. I'm at 7:55 on this video if you want to follow.
What is your guys' general political view? Like, what type of ideology do you have?
I'm an American.
Or do you have any at all?
I'm an American nationalist and a right-winger. When I say American nationalist, I don't mean what the Knicker Nation means, which is to say they tend to mean white nationalist. I mean that I'm an American patriot, that I value the people of this nation and this nation's history. And I think it's something to be proud of, and I want to preserve it.
What do you think about the demographic question?
I think that you should consider whenever you're thinking about importing people what the characteristics of their demographics are. So if you're importing people who are lower IQ, you should keep in mind that they're not going to stop being lower IQ when they come to your shores, as has been empirically shown.
What do you think about America? Yeah, exactly. What do you think about Israel?
I'm pro-Israel.
Like the state of Israel.
I'm broadly pro-Israel, and I think that among the American alliances, it's one of the ones that makes the most sense, given that Israel is a nuclear power in the Middle East, and that Israel shares various technological advances with America, and that it could go the other way if America were to cut off its relationship with Israel. And so I think that among the alliances that America makes, Israel is one of the ones that makes the most sense. Nevertheless, I think that systematically America is over committed abroad, and in the process of withdrawing all commitments should be less committed to Israel among all of its allies, because it's over-invested and that makes it less flexible.
But what do America win on having good relations with Israel?
It's a nuclear power in the Middle East.
America donate 3.8 billion.
It's a rather trivial amount. It's a rather trivial amount overall, and so
Israel will not bomb. I mean, they will not bomb America just because.
No, of course not.
You're gonna cut their relation.
No, absolutely not. But what it would do a number of things to.
America wins nothing by 3.8 billion.
The 3.8 billion thing is largely a red herring. It's not something of great significance. The issue is simply the question of whether Israel should be an ally or not. That's the question that to me has weight. As far as the 3.8 billion goes, I don't consider it to have very much weight at all.
I mean, Israel is our greatest ally, though they attacked USS Liberty.
Right. I mean, that's one of the more ridiculous examples, given that Israel, immediately apologized and paid restitution for that attack. Whereas there are plenty of countries
kill your family and then
there are plenty of countries
I
that
apologize. Are we still allies?
In the world of international relations, there are rather more hostile categories. Given that we talk with Vietnam, we talk with Germany, we talk with North Korea, we talk and we shake hands with lots of people. We try to make friends with lots of people. We talk, we shake hands with Iran. There are countries that have attacked America, right? They attacked America and not apologized for it, instead boasted about it, which America is trying to have friendly relations with. So the idea that Israel's attack on the USS Liberty, which was apologized for and which was a trivial event with very few casualties, that this should be a showstopper for an alliance with Israel, a nuclear power in the Middle East, who has important technical contributions to make, that's absurd. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, the most questionable thing is not the Liberty or $3.8 billion. It's the men like Mike Huckabee who say it's our greatest ally we can never abandon, which is never something you should be saying in any circumstances.
Yeah, I don't see it as being a.
That's
an exaggeration. That's an exaggeration, but on the other hand, I don't see it as being a particularly harmful one.
It's harmful because when you break it down, Israel is not America, America is America, and that's the part you would defend at all costs, not Israel.
Sure, but
and Israel does
obviously
all
America
those,
does not in practice defend Israel at all costs. in practice, America will very happily abandon Israel when it comes to paying any price in blood for Israel's security, as was proved in South Lebanon. So no, like the notion that America is liable to consider Israel as being a priority equal to American soil is just not American practice at all. Even when America was a lot more interventionist.
It's giving it too high a priority, though. If that's
Okay,
the
yeah, I mean, I agree.
exaggeration.
Taken literally, that statement is a vastly exaggerated statement of Israel's importance. Yeah. Of course, when talking about allies, you'll often have that sort of thing be said in search of good relations. So I think it's an isolated demand for rhetoric, for rhetorical caution. I don't think that overpraising any ally is a particularly bad idea.
It seems to be
How
a bad
does
idea when you give all these people the impression that doesn't leave them that they should be doing that.
It doesn't seem to be giving many people any sort of bad impression. Like, it seems to be good PR overall in America to support
Well,
Israel.
I'm saying it is good PR, and that's what makes it dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see it as being dangerous, though. I don't see the danger here.
The danger is promising and delivering on things that don't help America, but do help Israel more so.
But as I said, I mean, it's not like Israel. I mean, America is that committed to Israeli security. America sacrifices vastly less for Israel than it would for many other countries, or that it did for many other countries. So the idea that America is overinvested in Israeli security is in my opinion, incorrect. Like, relative to its other foreign policy issues. So if you're gonna complain about America being overinvested, I think that you have other places to point, not that
Um,
are rather more important than Israel.
I think since the fall of the Soviet Union, there haven't really been that many other places. There's South Korea, Taiwan sort of joined together, but at the same time,
Iraq,
you would also say
Afghanistan,
that, yeah, Afghanistan.
Ukraine.
I don't think there's that much investment in Ukraine.
America risks vastly more for Ukraine than it does for Israel. Giving arms to Ukraine is
Yeah,
highly
I would agree with that.
escalatory relative to support for Israel, which is supported by Russia as well. Russia also supports Israel. There's no one supporting Israel at this point with the state of geopolitics is not a particularly risky move, which is why everyone's doing it. Like, this is why you see relations start to blossom between the Gulf monarchies and Israel. They start to warm up to Israel because they see Israel as being a useful tool against Iran, and Russia warms up to Israel because they see Israel as being a player that's very important for their interests in Syria. So yeah, like there's no. There are other countries, there are other foreign policy issues that are so much more glaring if you're concerned about overinvestment abroad, which
I
makes the
think
focus
the
on Israel
overinvestment
seem rather
issue comes to a head.
rather to be. It makes the focus on Israel seem to be in bad faith, in my view.
Well, here's a way you could phrase it in terms of overinvestment. Um, Russia deals with Israel, yes, but it also deals with Iran. And the mistake America is making several times over is not also dealing with Iran as it deals with Israel. Because I wouldn't call for a complete abandonment of Israel, but they can't be given the premier status like that.
Yeah, but there were lots of reasons to disassociate from Iran besides Israel, right? It's not like Israel is the primary driver of Iranian-U.S. relations. The
I would
shift
say it's
of Iran from pro-America to
significant
anti-America
factor.
was not about Israel. It was about the Iranian Revolution. And the difficulties with the Iranian relationship have to do with Iran's actions, not with Israel.
Yes, it has to deal with their actions, but many of their actions do relate to Israel.
Not mostly. Mostly it relates to their own economic situation and their own economic isolation. And so you can associate everything with Israel, but the reality is that the Iranian Revolution inspired enmity in essentially everybody, and that results in these spiraling conflicts, which include those between Iran and the United States, which were quite severe and which are heating up now. So to blame everything on Israel doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, it's not everything on Israel. There's also the Gulf monarchies. I mean, in terms of asking for any retribution, they should probably get a lot more than Israel. But
What do you mean? Israel. I mean,
I
the Gulf
mean,
monarchies are customers of America. They pay a lot of money to the American national security complex. So, I mean, I don't see where this relates to Israel necessarily.
it's just in terms of reevaluating what you would ask for them. Israel can still give things, but in my opinion, anything the Gulf monarchies give is pretty worthless considering the damage they've done as well.
Oh, okay. So you're against the alliance with the Gulf countries, but of course, if America decides to kick the Gulf monarchies to the curb, then Russia will sweep in and take that oil money, right? I mean, for their defense
Mm,
sector.
depends on how you do
What
it.
else could happen?
You could basically completely destroy all of their defense infrastructure and say, hey, Iran, you take that.
That's an absurd move. I mean, such a move would reveal you to be a madman and would basically make an enemy out of everyone because you've just suddenly turned on a dime, attacked your allies, and handed them over to your geopolitical enemy. It's just an absurd move. It doesn't make any sense.
It is absurd today, but it won't keep being absurd once it's reality.
It will continue. It will keep being absurd. There's no chance of such a thing happening.
Well, why would everything stay the same if it's all changed? Why would that be still our enemy if we decided not to make it our enemy? That's kind of tautological.
The enmity is not based on the whims of America, and the allies that America has are also not based on the whims of America. It's based on how things have shaken out due to historical factors and the ties that bind. And so, no, there's not going to be some sort of situation where we turn on a dime and attack our allies, some of our best customers, and decide to reveal ourselves to be, completely unreliable and in fact, betrayers beyond what relationship we've already accumulated in that regard. There's no reward for that. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, there
Mike
is a
says.
reward, but I don't
Mike
expect
says
it
the
to
Luke
happen.
Ford show made me a blood sports fan. I don't know. Yeah. I agree with that in large part. He brought the energy. Mike says, I hope the Fuentes drama continues. Yeah. Let's check Twitter and see if there's anything new happening in that regard. What's going on? Let's see if Crowder or what's his name? What was the name of the guy? Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk has anything to say about the recent events?
Charlie Kirk, yeah. Yeah, he said that they were infiltrated by Nickers. Nickers, not
Yeah, I know. I know about their
N-words.
very funny their funny moniker.
But we need to clarify it so you don't get banned from YouTube, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he doesn't need to have commented on the Crowder stream, but yeah, he did talk about the infiltrators earlier. The Nick Nation, yeah, I'm gonna call them the Nick Nation, like the
what
Fire Nation and the
what
Earth
kind of
Nation.
ethnic background do you have?
What kind of what? Ethnic background?
What ethnic
I have a Jewish
background
mother
do you
and
have? Yeah.
and a German father, basically.
Oy vey, oy vey. There we go.
Yep.
I call. I thought. Yeah. My Jew radar went on, so that's why I asked you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Usually, people don't seem to clock me though. Like I was talking to some people who were anti-Semitic, and until I said I was Jewish, which I don't hide, by the way, they didn't realize it. It seems like the Judar is pretty weak in most cases, which surprises me because you'd think it'd be easier.
If you know the Jews, you know.
Mm-hmm.
My radar is great. That's why
Your
I
radar
asked
is
you.
amazing. Is that Borat in chat?
It's at the
Are you Borat?
boom,
Very
boom, boom, boom.
nice. Very nice.
What?
Are you
Very
Borat?
nice. No wonder you shot for it. No, I'm not anyone in chat.
Josh Randall says, "Thank God I'm not on this panel. I'd be hurting people's feelings." Oh, and what a disaster that would be. Let's see.
Margaret.
Franz has a Twitter post to show me. Let's see what he has. What's he got? Yeah. He's It's an LGBT slam.
Have you watched Steven
slammed.
Molyneux?
Yeah, I watched Stephen
Have you
Molyneux.
watched, like
Molyneux.
Steven Molyneux. Yeah, yeah.
Molyneux, yeah. The neckiest of the
His
Molyneux.
His latest tweets about Jewish influence and why Jews in Israel are promoting multiculturalism to other countries than their own, and yeah, stuff like that.
Fletcher says, "My God, this guy has severe autism. Don't worry, he's just European. This is actually how normal Europeans sound."
I'm a European. Exactly, I'm a North European. And I'm
North
not
Europeans
the-
actually,
like the
and it does
best
get more
guy
specific than that. I think it's the
speaking English, but-
the infliction of the darkness, of the long darkness. It does seem to create that phenotype. Mike is in the chat. Mike, do you have any thoughts on the ongoing discussion? Maybe
I
not.
just logged
Meh.
in, so I missed what you talked about recently.
Yeah, we
Were you
talked
talking
about
about Fuentes?
yeah, Fuentes mostly.
I mean, it's-
Fuentes and politics more generally.
Yeah, I like the blood sports. I mean, I'm not sure it's worth it for like Crowder to debate them or something, but it's fun.
Yeah,
Both the blood sports and talking about the ideas.
right.
I had a slightly less, entertaining question, but if you are willing to change subjects briefly.
Sure.
I mean, I live in a Sunbelt city, and it's just the biggest waste of space, cars, parking. We have this highway, it's like 11 lanes in each direction. And the city of Houston's going from like 7 million people to 10 million people. So
Mhm.
what do you think the best solution is? Because they can't really build rail, buses suck. So I'm kind of hopeful that technology and smart cars will make a Sunbelt city much better, and other cities too. So
Well,
you being
maybe.
younger and more in touch with
I think that
technology, I was wondering.
the effect of technology is probably like vastly overstated relative to other factors. Because yeah, like I don't know if you guys saw it, but Elon Musk had a conference where he said that future is these robo taxis, these self-driving cars, which are going to solve all the problems and are going to be a huge money maker. I'm kind of skeptical about that, and I think that sociological factors are going to be more important in terms of changing city life than technology. One piece of social technology that could be levied is just a congestion tax. If you tax congestion, then you could create vastly more capacity out of the roads. But that's not going to happen, obviously. So, the issue is fundamentally sociological in my view, and I think that technology, it's going to be a slow process if it does alleviate these issues. But yeah, I don't know. What do you expect exactly? Like in terms of California, it seems like the main problem is just governance, not technology, not infrastructure so much as just the fact that so many sensible things are banned.
I think the main problem is just they didn't think these cities out. I mean, that's the American way, right? It's just develop land, build houses. But then when you have such a high density population in a city where everyone has a car, there's just not enough space. So they don't really do rail because it's really expensive. They do like busways. It's much less expensive to do busways, even though it's not as nice as rail. But
Busways
I'm
seem to be
hoping-
buses seem to be so much cheaper, right? For doing the same job, it's astonishing how much cheaper they are in America than trains. I think that for trains to be good, you kind of have to be Japanese and push people into the train with sticks. I don't know if you've seen those videos. Yeah, like that's the kind of thing that you need in order to make trains really work is volume, and American trains seem to be half empty most of the time. EgyptoBot1 says, "There's no way HBD will be acknowledged by the mainstream, unfortunately." Well, the issue that I think people don't understand is that there is you're caught between a rock and a hard place if you want to deny it, because you can just say, well, why is it that East Asians are so much richer? Is it because of some conspiracy to defraud people of other races? Why is it that the Jews are so much richer? Is it because of a conspiracy to defraud other races? Why is it that Indians are so much richer? not just in the West, but abroad. There are many Indian communities in the global South, and they're considerably richer than their neighbors. Is it because of some sort of conspiracy? And so you're forced to be quote unquote
Jews are the
racist either way.
smartest race.
Sorry.
Jews have the highest middle IQ.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, drop the red pill. So why is that? Is it socioeconomic things? No, it is not. It is
No.
race related. Thank
Yeah.
you.
It's genetic. But if it's not genetic, the funny thing is that even if it's not genetic, that doesn't rescue the people who are anti-HBD, because a rigorous definition that actually meets the data. Let's say that we're gonna take it as a given that it's racism. It must be racism. It can't be anything else. Then racism becomes something very different from the colloquial definition. It's not rednecks who say the N-word. It includes people who are stridently anti-racist in all of their rhetoric and all of their beliefs, but nevertheless have some sort of sneaking cloud of dark racism that subliminally causes them to cripple people of other races. And at that point, like once you've found that even with the most intensive measures you can't remove this dark cloud, the implications practically become exactly the same.
Are you ever going to argue this, though? Because it seems like your plans to eventually end up on CNN or whatever, I don't think they're going to be very happy to hear any of that. It wouldn't be a victory, politically speaking.
Yeah, well, I don't think that the way lies in red pilling people on CNN. I think that the way lies in having discussions and pointing out the problems with the existing worldview, because those problems abound, right? And I can also point out, for example, like the way that the Nazis excused their actions through a denigration of racial materialism, right? Goebbels was not a racial materialist; he was anti-materialist. They were romantics. And it's exactly that kind of romantic notion of the absence of difference, but the importance of spirit that seems to invigorate genocides around the world. It's not really the reputation of HBD, in my opinion, can be rehabilitated.
Sorry if I stop you, but are you implying the Holocaust thing now? Like, do you imply that the Deutsche State killed 6 million Jews by gassing?
Yeah, 5 to 6 million. And whether it was by gassing is irrelevant. It's just that you take the Jewish population before the Third Reich marched on, and then you take the Jewish population after. And so the uncertainty is just based on demographic uncertainties.
Yeah. And it increased by 700, 800,000.
No, it didn't.
For 14.3 from beginning, and then after 15 point something.
No, that's just incorrect information. But the incorrect information abounds with these sorts of conspiracy theories. Yeah. But yeah, it's just flatly wrong. The population did indeed decrease.
Conspiracy theory that the Holocaust didn't happen?
Yeah.
What's all the proof that the German state killed 6 million Jews by gassing?
The fact that doesn't matter whether it was by gassing.
Why did you go to prison?
And it's odd. It's odd the fixation that people have on the method. The fact is that when the Wehrmacht marched into these places, the Jewish communities were destroyed, and so there were many Jewish communities that don't exist anymore. Among them, places that were the ancestral home of my family in Eastern Europe. These villages were extirpated by the Germans. So it's a very clear thing. You can just look at the absence of these populations after the Wehrmacht marched on.
Yes.
Do you think,
is it a conspiracy that Jews are being kicked out of 109 countries? Is that a conspiracy?
No,
yes,
but it's an incredibly dumb talking point, given that Jews were the only religious minority that were allowed in so many countries and for such a long time. What's the religious minority you're comparing them to?
Why were they
all the other religious
out?
minorities weren't even allowed in the first place? So by your reasoning, we're even more despised. And by the way, how did these Christians treat each other if they had different denominations? Not very well. So the notion that the mistreatment of Jews represents some perfidy on the part of Jews as opposed to the nature of religious conflict is, in my opinion, absurd.
You know that Jewish communities in Turkey were never evicted. That's an interesting fact.
Yeah, the Jews in the Middle East before the formation of Israel we're doing relatively well. Again, on the whole, the record of Jews as religious minorities, they're probably more accepted than other very visibly and very distinctly religious minorities in terms of their ability to survive in these places. Because usually, being a religious minority is a very, very bad thing indeed. And so, like, it's just an absolute lack of understanding of what your priors should be and of what you should expect to say that because Jews have been expelled, that means that they're perfidious. It means that they're somehow evil. It just doesn't make any sense. Fletcher says whites were kicked out of more than 109 countries. I'm not sure if that's technically true, but yeah, like whites were kicked out of Rhodesia. Was that because of their perfidy? Was it because of their evil?
Nick Fuentes, what's that accent? What's your accent?
What? I'm from
What's your
Sweden.
accent? Oh.
Swedish. Yes. What was the question I was gonna ask? Yeah. Why do you think it's illegal to question the so-called Holocaust? And why can you go to jail for questioning it?
Because
you can't go to jail
Europe
for
doesn't
saying
have freedom
the
of
Cold
speech,
War didn't
has never had
happen,
freedom of
or-
speech, and bans all sorts of speech that they view to be distasteful. So
But why is
as
that
a
a
really
sensitive topic?
disgusting and stupid thing to say, it's something that is going to be banned in places that ban speech. Right? So if you have the attitude that you're going to ban
So
speech, what
they
you
are
do is you
banning it
ban
because it's so
stupid and
that
disgusting
nobody
speech.
would believe it. Truth doesn't fear investigation. So my point is, why would you even take that as a taboo?
That's not how it works.
The
To
Like
question the Holocaust. If everyone thought it happened
Gingra.
and you were put out
It's
as the
ubiquitous
Joker.
to have such restrictions on speech. It's only the Anglos who figured out freedom of speech politically, and at this point, Britain is not on very solid ground. The normal situation is for speech that people don't like to be banned. That's the normal situation. It's not about the credibility of it. It's about their dislike for it. See all the banning of religious ideas by other religions, which are equally nonsensical. It's not about the relative credibility. It's about the dislike.
Why would they dislike such a thing? Why,
Because
why could you say like
because
the Soviets?
it's a claim.
killings
It's
of
a,
80 million
it's a claim.
people?
It's a claim that basically defends the Nazis, who are widely despised in Europe for their crimes, not just against the Jews, but against many countries. And so to defend the Nazis is distasteful. It's a clear lie, and lies are distasteful. It's an attack on not just the Jews, but on all of the people who collect histories and talk about history. It's a statement that they're all part of some Jewish plot to defraud people. So of course, on all these levels, it's offensive and distasteful to pretty much everybody.
Not to Greeks.
Let's see.
To test the Nazis.
Egyptobot says this Swedish guy just found 4chan 2 weeks ago. Oh yeah, seems like a little bit long,
No.
little bit
No.
little bit longer than that. But yeah, that's the basic idea here. The red pill. When the red pill goes wrong.
You think I found like 4chan and I'm just 4chan posting here? Nah, that's not the case. So yeah, you can take that idea out of your head right now.
Mm-hmm. You're not a fan of 4chan?
Nah, I'm never browsing it. I can browse it once or two times a month, or even that.
Right.
I'm not like a big fan. I think it's fed posting there, and so.
But why is
it's
a European
bunch of
talking about Fed
posting
posting? That's an American concept that you're appropriating. This is appropriation of American culture. You're appropriating our feds. What's next? Gilbert Salgado says, Kyle, do you know about Caleb Kane, a.k.a. Faraday Speaks? I've heard of him, and I've been told to join his Discord, but I can't join his Discord because his link is dead. Let me see if that's still true. Caleb Kane, Twitter. Have you guys heard of Caleb Kane?
Who
He
is
was
that?
He was a guy who basically made his name by talking about how he fell down the alt-right rabbit hole but now he's cured.
Oh, he ran that like honeypot server.
Honeypot
It's
server.
right rabbit hole. Yeah.
Yeah, it was linked in
Here we
the
go.
other chat a while back. They were advertising that they would take in other alt-right people and cure them, basically. But I think it was just to stock them.
Just to what? Just to stalk them?
Just to stock.
Any reason for that?
Yeah.
I'm just
Hello. Okay, so you guys were off stream for a little while. Just reiterate what you were saying earlier. Yellow?
Me?
I said
Yeah. Well,
well,
y'all.
Yeah, so
yeah. I just said that. Yeah, well, I can take the role as the 17-year-old Swedish PewDiePie here.
Are you a fan of PewDiePie?
Köttbullar, Ikea, skrattar du förlorar du. I can say stuff in Swedish if you want to, just to.
Beautiful. Well, he has a huge audience, so this
Yeah.
is gonna propel me to the big money, big money dreams because of the Swedish
Yeah.
the Swedishness was the key of his success, I think. Yeah. So you are a PewDiePie fan, as I suspected.
Yeah, I'm not a 9-year-old, but you know.
Josh Randall says Caleb is born again cucked.
I'm one of the
Brutal.
guys watching him. I'm
Right.
watching PewDiePie, of course, and I believe the thing with ADL was hilarious. He was going to donate $50,000 to the Anti-Defamation League, aka
Do you think he ever intended to
anti-free speech
donate that, or do you think
hate.
it was a fake a fake claim that he was going to donate to
It
them?
could have.
I think it was
Yeah,
genuine. I think that he intended
don't
to,
know.
but then he changed his mind.
Yeah. But you know what? He said one year, it was 2018. He said something about he would never donate to the ADL. I found the Reddit on the Reddit subreddit. I mean for.
Oh, really?
PewDiePie.
Yeah, so that would be a data point in favor
Yeah,
of it
and
being
then somebody
being an op.
posted a video of him 2018 claim. He claimed that he would never do such a thing, and that would just if he would have done it, it would have just been for saving his reputation. Yeah, that's what you say.
He
So
said all that
that's why.
before all this happened.
Yeah, he said that 1 year. Yeah, 1 year before. Yeah, 1 year.
Massive Testosterone says debating if I want my voice associated. Bro, don't worry. Like, there's not gonna be some sort of voice stalking technology that's gonna come up, and you can always use a voice distorter. You can always use one of those, including like a terrible mic. You could use one of those cheap mics, and it has built-in Fed protection against voice recognition technology and stalking. I will let you fast.
Helium, too.
Massive Testosterone will be in the safest of spaces if he talks. He's a much coveted guest. Never gotten him to talk before. Fletcher says my mic is cheap but not by design. Hey, take credit. Always take credit. Never reject credit. Let's see. But yeah, so what were we talking about? 222. You just joined the chat. Anyone who wants to talk can talk. In the meanwhile, I'm going to be looking at the old YouTube video.
I was going to ask, did you have any verdict on Kenneth Brown? You just listened to a little bit, I guess.
Kenneth Brown. This guy. Yeah, he
Yeah.
seems like he seems, like I said in the beginning, he seems like he's a black pillar. In large part, he's black pilled by the same things that I'm white pilled by, or yeah, his black pills are my white pills, which is weird. I think he suffers from that anti-materialist problem, where people who are anti-materialist become enemies of reason and enemies of the good, because anytime good things are happening in the material world, that's used as a way to describe how fallen we are, how we've departed from God's light. And so you always have an excuse and always have the ability to drift into self-pity and drift into this sort of antipathy towards everyone else. That's the dark side of religion. Religion has a light side and a dark side. The light side is that it's always an escape hatch to positivity, but the dark side is that it's always an escape hatch to negativity. you can use it as an excuse either to feel that everything is great and the world is love, or that everything is terrible and the world is evil. And so that's, I think, the problem that's befalling this gentleman here.
I find him
Trying to
pretty
find a
thought
video.
provoking on a variety of subjects.
Yeah, he seems intelligent, and he seems like an analytical dude.
Definitely.
I'm gonna restart the video, the Kenneth Brown video.
That would be maybe we've come to 3 categories: people who say they hate it but they ultimately ignore it, don't do anything. This is the vast majority of people, I think. There are people who really hate white men, know that this is evil, and they want to hurt white men. They want to emasculate white men. They want to decrease the
Oh no,
agency of
this
white
is
men. They want to.
older.
I mean, if you honestly hate white men and you're trying to chemically castrate them, I don't share your sentiment, but what you're doing is logical. What you're doing makes sense. What you're doing is people, bourgeois, lower class people who are maybe in a managerial position, but never who are truly dictating policy and power and governance and sovereignty. So if this is the situation, then there is no path from A to B. Unless there is something outside of our control, like something like some sort of systems collapse or whatever, there's some huge paradigm shift, but no one is capable of creating that individually. I think we have to understand these 4 types of people and these 4 attitudes and these 4 ways of thinking. We need to put them in the proper place. And we need to, I guess, first understand that there is I guess the existential problem is not how do we get Trump into office, or how do we cause a crisis, because crises can be integrated. When you look at the state apparatus and the media apparatus is built not just to handle a crisis, but to profit from a crisis. So if someone were to take some violent action, the system would take that violent action. It would make it into a caricature. I mean, just look at what happened in Germany not too long ago. It's a caricature. It's horrifying. And the system promotes that. The system likes that. The system is in favor of that. The system, that is not a threat to the system. That is part of the Hegelian dialect of the system. So, the system exists as a thesis. There is this antithesis of the lone wolf or something like this. And then the synthesis is, we need even more censorship. We need even more control. We need even more of a monoparty to resist this kind of lone wolf.
Well, it does. It doesn't threaten the system, but I think the people who are running the system are deeply unhappy about it. I don't think that they're ever rubbing their hands in glee at lone wolf terrorism, because I think that they're struggling with the number of levers that they have to pull. They're struggling with the complexity of the system that they're managing, and so anything going wrong is deeply stressing when you're in that circumstance, when you don't have mastery. And I think that our modern elites do not have mastery. They don't have comfort in their role. And so anytime things are going wrong, it feels very bad to them. But does anyone have thoughts on that? Is it in fact the case that the elites, take joy and profit from shooters like in Christchurch, like in Halle recently? Is that something that the system desires?
What conspiracy would say that?
Just that it represents the it benefits the system because it makes an absurdity out of opposition to the system, or it makes the opposition to the system out to be evil. So that process itself serves the system, actually reinforces the system, despite being intended to resist it. It in fact reinforces it and gives it more power.
I think they'll be cackling if Trump gets impeached, but until then, it's not like they can get much from these events.
Yeah, and this is more broad than about Trump or anything like that. It's about the system more broadly. It's about power, about the nature of power, and how what power likes and what power dislikes, or what helps power and what hurts. And it seems to me like the challenges to the current world order, they're not good for the world order, but they're also not sufficiently dangerous. But the people who are running things don't know that. I don't think that they know much of anything. In terms of, I don't think that they're very they're comfortable in their skin, and so they never feel safe exactly. And so anything stressful like lone wolf terrorism, that's not going to be something that they really profit from. It's just going to be an irritant that they're going to be. Their attitude is going to be that of an overly emotional and spurned child, or teenager who's been hurt by a wasp or something. They're going to respond in a flailing and relatively erratic manner, and it's not going to be very pleasant.
I would point to Greta Thunberg as the example of that more than lone wolf shootings, because there was a big media effort and money that came from somewhere about that.
Sure, but Greta Thunberg is in favor of the value structure of the elite, right? She's reinforcing the things that the elite say are holy things that the elite say are virtuous. That's what Greta Thunberg is emphasizing. And so, given that, well, she's not exactly a threat in the way that your lone wolf terrorists are.
Well, climate change is the presumed threat there that would make them feel unnerved or powerless.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah. I think that well, a lot of it is a replacement, kind of a cut and paste replacement for religion. So I think that it serves as an apocalyptic myth, and so people have weird and interesting interactions with apocalyptic myths that aren't exactly straightforward. But that being said, yeah, I don't think that they're exactly happy about the climate change thing. They believe in it, but I don't think that they're rubbing their hands in glee about it.
Not distraction, but a threat. And oftentimes these people, again, they never attack or harm rich people. They never attack or harm elite people. They're always talking about, what does Kurt Doolittle talk about? He says, well, maybe we should take down the power grid. Well, every rich person has a backup generator. Backup generators are not actually, you can get a backup generator, but every single rich person has a backup generator. Every single rich person has some kind of plan B, whether it be a yacht or, whatever.
Josh Randall says we should do a stream decimating the tacky conspiracy theories. 9/11 flat Earth, moon landing hoax. It would be so much fun. Yeah, it could be fun, but it would have to be a community activity. Oh, Church of Entropy says I rub my hands in glee when Kyle Rowland is streaming. Beautiful.
Google the dancing Israelis.
Hell yeah. You can see the Israelis standing nonplussed, looking at the burning towers. Dancing.
Yeah.
It's one of the,
fun
like...
when you research that.
Yep.
Even if that shouldn't be the primary question, but
What's the
I
primary
agree that the
question
demographic
about
problem, the demographic question, the replacement.
Yeah.
Believe the world is suffering from an ethnic replacement, kind of, you can call it genocide.
That's one of the more absurd takes, in my opinion, that I see a lot in this space. That it's genocide to have immigrants. I think that it's not a use of the term that makes sense in the English language.
Not having immigrants, it's having too much immigrants. It's have too many than you can handle.
It's many things, but genocide is not one of them.
Without being replaced. If you're importing, if you're a country and you have 5 million inhabitants, and then you bring in 500,000, and then you see that they breed about three children per family, 3 to 4 children, and your own only breeds 1, and in a long term, in a long time, you will get replaced. See. So,
yeah,
would you
well,
call it
that's
a genocide, or would you call it a suicide?
I mean, genocide has connotations of violent action and of force. So inviting people into your country is never genocide, ever. Regardless of its demographic considerations, it's never a genocide. And in general, when you're talking about genocide, you're not even talking about interbreeding at all. These concepts are generally disconnected, because interbreeding is a voluntary process, unless you're kicking people in breeding pens or something. But that's not happening. So yeah, if you were taking forcibly inseminating people against their will, then that would be one thing.
Agenda?
Not really. Not the way that most people say it. I don't think that there's some desire to end race purity. I don't think that that's really a goal. I think that what's driving these support for immigration is humanitarian and economic considerations, largely. I don't think it's about hurting white people.
We don't benefit from them. The countries taking them don't really benefit.
Yeah, but they expect to. Merkel thought that it was fundamentally analogous to Eastern European immigration. She thought that by getting the earliest immigrants, she could get the cream of the crop. She genuinely did not understand that there are differences between populations.
I think there is a political consideration to them as well, because they expect immigrants and the children of immigrants to vote a certain way, at least in democracies.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. Is political considerations in terms of the voting blocks. So yeah, they expect political reward, particularly in America. I don't think that's the case really in Germany so much, or in Europe rather so much. I haven't really heard of that dynamic being operative. Hey, Fletcher. Hello.
Hey, what's up?
How's it going?
Hello?
Let's see. Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Do you have any thoughts on
My
the
mic is
discussion?
kind of crappy.
Yeah, just try to talk
What's
and then
going
mute
on?
yourself when you're not talking, because there's some wind noise. But yeah, you can just click the mute and then unmute. Yeah, like yeah, you can hop in whatever you want. Yeah, I don't know. Gilbert Salgado says this Swedish guy is hardcore Pepe. Agreed, or maybe he's a groiper. I think that the groiper is the hip new thing nowadays. But yeah, like one thing that I notice with the radicalization of young people is just that like maximalist conspiracy theories are used to explain dysfunction, and that leads people to go down a sort of rabbit hole where they believe in conspiracy after conspiracy, when really the
What
explanations are far more
conspiracy theories?
banal. That people are trying to
What are
genocide white
the,
people, for example.
Okay. You think that's a conspiracy?
Yeah,
That like there's an anti-white agenda going on?
there's definitely what you might call an anti-white agenda. But broadly speaking, it goes back to the history of the left. So even before there were multi-ethnic situations, you have this dynamic where people hate successful people, right? In the French Revolution, it was hatred of the nobility and the merchants. It wasn't about race; it was just about success. And so whenever you have people who are more successful, you're going to have other people who are less successful want to attack them for that. And that's part of that's what's happening in terms of race relations. That's what happened with.
Or it's about just your own survival?
Well, you're usually
maybe
not.
You
You're
want to
usually not
survive.
helped
Maybe you
by
want
this
to
enmity.
keep your own rate.
Yeah, you can want that, but fundamentally it's a personal thing. And then if you say that you have ownership over the reproductive choices of your entire race, well, your entire race does not agree with that, right? They would call that an attempt by you to enslave them.
'Cause,
So
I mean, the real minority in world are whites. The real minority, if you watch
every
the
major
whole
group,
world, Africa, America.
yeah,
So if you
every
take, all
every
the
ethnic group
population
is a
of the whole
minority in the
world.
world. Every great race is a minority in the world. So that's not unique to
Yeah,
white
but
people.
if you watch the percent of population, no, it is unique to white people.
No, it's not. Like
Yes, it is.
sub-Saharan Africans are a minority in the world.
No, not only whites. But if you watch like the biggest groups, if you take, for example, Africans and Asians, and you just go by those three, and Caucasians, like Caucasians, or what we would say white people are the minority.
Yeah, the point is that all these groups are minorities in terms of none of them form a majority of the world population. Yeah, massive testosterone talk. Please
No,
talk.
I know how you think.
So yeah, like basically the issue is that in favor of accurate explanations, there are these conspiracy theories which make it so that the energies that could be directed productively against the problems of the establishment are instead directed at madness.
There
But-
isn't a productive way to do it as long as the establishment is established.
But there is.
That's the-
There's politics. There's political activism. Massive testosterone. You
When
want to
you
talk?
talk about
I mean-
political, you talk about
I guess
political
not.
activism all the time, but when you describe it, it's basically doing everything the establishment says, but just
No,
saying
it's not.
change this one thing.
It's not doing everything the establishment says. It's pushing within the politically viable space. And so if you're out in outer space in terms of your political ambitions, then of course it looks like it has no difference to you. But that's not what a reasonable person does. A reasonable person looks within the realm of possibility. So if you're joining a car company and you want to push for a certain design, you don't push for it to be turned into some sort of hot rodded Formula One car. You push for a slight change. And that slight change is what you should care about. If you don't care about that, then you're not in the business of making cars. You're not in the business of being an employee of that car manufacturer. You're just out in outer space with
Well,
your own dreams.
I
Your
think
ambitions have
in
to
that
relate to
analogy,
possibility, or you are simply mad.
I don't know about madness, but in that analogy, what you would do is make a bunch of money elsewhere and then start your own car company with your own design.
Okay, well then, by that analogy, what you do in American politics is just go somewhere else and start your own country, basically, or your own organization that is absolutely separate in the manner that the Amish are, or the Orthodox Jews are, or the Haredim are. So yeah, you can do that, but if you're interested, but that puts you outside of American politics, which you're always welcome to do.
Yeah. Well, I don't believe that any of the reasonable changes you suggest are going to accomplish anything of significance. Not that
Right,
you've.
and that's simply a matter of perspective. I view these changes as being very significant, but others might not. And I think that fundamentally to connect your perspective on what's better and what's worse to reality, to reasonable possibilities, is the only way to be sane.
Mm, I don't know about sanity. You can have visions of outer space, but that doesn't mean you can think they're practical. You can just think that there would be the only way to achieve a certain goal.
Sure, but in terms of politics, if your political activism is disconnected from reality, then you're spending your time on something that doesn't connect with reality, and that's madness in my view.
I wouldn't encourage people to be political activists, at least as long as the baby boomers still control so many things. I would say save your
I'm
money
gonna
and
rep the
wait.
boomers. Go boomers. Boomers are the best. Um, Someone says, oh, EgyptoBot1 says, what do you think the most viable road is to spreading HBD? Well, like I said, talk about the Igbos in Nigeria, talk about the Indians in Uganda, talk about the Jews in Old Europe, talk about the whites in Rhodesia, talk about all these groups around the world where the same pattern repeats itself, where what actually causes genocidal ambitions is the denial of difference. When you deny difference, you maximize the chance that there'll be violence, because if the reason for different outcomes is not inherent differences, then it must be it must be some sort of conspiracy to hurt people, to defraud people, to steal from people. Talk about them where? Well, wherever you can, on YouTube if you can, somewhere else if you can't.
Well, you can talk, but no one's going to listen. These things are kind of like the Nazis. No one likes them. They're disgusting. People want them banned.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I've had a lot of success in terms of talking about them, even to people who are relatively normie in their outlook. I mean, it's like you can assume that nobody's going to listen, but that's your take. I have my own take on the possibilities, and I think that in fact this is the most viable path forward.
I think the thing about that is if you're talking to someone about these things, they're probably not a normie.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, it's just a judgment call, but I have more information about my own experience than you, and I have just my own judgment, which I trust more than yours. So for those reasons, I think that I'm right, and I won't be convinced simply by an assertion otherwise. Oh, what's going on? Someone joined and left the Discord. All right, let's continue listening to Mr. Kenneth Brown, or let's see. It's getting kind of late. See if there's anything
In
else.
Sweden, the time is 4:35 a.m.
Jesus, dude. What's wrong with your sleep schedule? You
Yeah,
gotta
I
keep
know.
that in. Gotta keep that in check, man.
It the thing that is wrong is that we have an autumn break or fall break. So
You're still in high
this
school?
whole weekend, this no secondary up, what it's called, secondary upper school,
I think that's kind of equivalent.
something like that.
Yeah.
I'm
Let's see.
gonna see what it's called.
West Fork says, I was trying to explain to a high
Uh,
IQ professional about how hard it was to hire professionals of a certain race, and I quickly turned to him questioning me. Well, everything depends on how you phrase things and what the context is of it, because like the context that I'm interested in is basically a very broad one, where you're talking about the problems with different ideologies. It's not about like attacking the possibilities of diversity. It's about talking about the problems with belief in human uniformity. That leads to violence, and that leads to resentment. And that's a point that's very powerful, actually. Fletcher says so many kids get pulled into wignattery by charlatans. I think that more of the situation is that people are attracted to drama and attracted to interesting, discussions that involve a lot of emotion, and so that's where the edgy kids of tomorrow are gonna get a lot of their opinions. It's not a surprise that it attracts people who are interested in drama.
They can find shelter, they can find safety, they can find refuge, they can stockpile food more effectively, they
Should
can
we
they can
talk
have better
about?
security and better defense than the average person. So in the case of kind of a systems collapse, the richer
Do you know the video that I'm
I have
watching?
no idea what we should talk about now.
Do you know that the video that we're watching is the Kenneth
What
Brown
video are you watching?
Yeah, the video I just posted. I'm on 1848 timestamp, and he's talking about elites and about the weakness or strength of elites relative to the common person when it comes to revolutions, which is a point that I've often made, is that the common person is usually hit very hard by people who are moralizing about how their revolution is meant to save the common man.
Okay.
are insulated. And the people who are targeted are working people living paycheck to paycheck, people living in apartments complexes, people living in cities.
I mean, I don't
people
think
who are
in practice any revolution will help someone who's common in it, but a fair amount of them will eventually benefit their children in the long term.
Right. Let's
Do
see.
anybody think it's interesting why, like, the climate change movement, and I know Greta is from Sweden, you know.
Yep.
So
your
she's from
your
the
your
same
classmate
country,
your
and
classmate is coming to America and lecturing us about how to live. Swedish supremacy.
Basically. Yeah, exactly. Swedish supremacy is taking over the world. Replace Swedish with Jewish, and then you get the real. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not kidding. I'm serious.
But what do you think is
Oh, but,
interesting about the climate
my
change movement?
question we're gonna. It was that they're telling people to stop breed children. Children are the worst climate. The enemy to the climate change is more children. You know.
Yeah, that's obviously true from their perspective.
Stop
That
reproducing because
people have carbon footprints.
Yeah.
Oh, owned.
Yeah, and then they can never answer how much of, like, how much do the humans really affect the climate change? Is it, how natural is it? Is it natural things, or is it caused by humans? And if it's caused by humans, how much in percent? Nobody has ever stated, like, the statistics on it. So that's very interesting.
Well, yeah,
Sorry
I mean,
for bad English.
sure. So what I would say is that we don't have very good accuracy on the sensitivity of the climate to CO2 emissions. More people equals more CO2 emissions, but you've seen like radical shifts over recent years in the estimated sensitivity of the climate, just forced by additional data. And it's also not clear like why a warming world is a much worse world. I saw an interview with a Greenpeace co-founder. He was one of the more science-minded fellows in Greenpeace who got kicked out, basically. And he was saying, like, I don't see why people love ice so much, right? Like, why is ice so well loved? Nothing much can live on ice. So to make the world warmer is to improve its carrying capacity for life. In fact, we have past experiments where the Earth was much warmer, much higher in CO2,
there are many
and had much
flaws.
more life. That was where like a lot of the biggest oil forming regions were, because that represented life.
Exactly.
Right? So yeah, it's
And more
yeah.
CO2 equals a greener Earth.
yeah, and that's actually happening.
NASA has even got.
No,
Yeah,
that's one
so
of
the
stupidest
Earth is
things
getting
I've ever
greener.
heard.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
What?
what's the first life that's going to spread in a warmer world? It's the mosquito.
Wait, sorry.
That's true.
Say it again.
Fuck the mosquitoes. Yeah.
The warmer
He
world
meant that
means
a
more
warmer
mosquitoes
world.
and more flies.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's true, but it also means more of everything else, right? So it's not like a world where we get overwhelmed by mosquitoes and flies.
What?
Well,
say
I don't think
more?
it's more of everything else because a lot of everything else is suppressed. People do a good job of not letting more rainforest grow, for instance.
Well, like overall, like life is going to increase in terms of magnitude. Like there's going to be more life, right? Overall, and in particular, there's going to be more humans because humans are probably the most resilient in terms of adapting the biosphere to their interests. In terms of like carving out parts of the biosphere and making it be productive for humanity. So yeah, like the things that humanity cares about, more of that's going to happen. That's good.
I don't think so because they don't really explain, okay, there's going to be more opportunities for things that already exist to grow, but they don't say, where is the good soil going to come from that's going to give us the good grasslands
Where
for
did
the
the good soil
cows?
come from to feed the vast growth of vegetation in past eras of high CO2? Because apparently they didn't have a soil problem back then, and in fact you'd expect more CO2 to mean
Took
better soil. Why should more CO2 mean worse
took a
soil?
lot.
It means more growth, and growth makes biomass, which makes good soil. Good soil has a certain percentage of organic
Yeah.
material.
It's not just the CO2 change in the vacuum, it's the CO2 and everything else, so you can't really separate them.
Well, the point is that past times when CO2 changed, it resulted in more greenery, more life, more oil formation, right?
Yeah,
So
I
there's
agree
no
with
reason
that.
to expect that to not apply here.
Well, yes, there
One
was
one
more
thing.
greenery, but I imagine that change took place over a while, several million years, and the transition period
Well,
would
what
have
we're
been
seeing right
marked
now
by,
is more greenery, Starman. We're seeing more greenery right now.
no, I don't think it's quite like that.
That's what's
You
happening.
see, you see trees sprout up in new places, but you also see more
You
fires,
see
so it's
more
kind of,
biomass. And in fact, that's in the explanations of climate change. If you look at their diagrams, like the extra CO2, some of it gets absorbed by the oceans, some by rock weathering, some by other processes. But one of the processes is just the biosphere that expands in size. That's part of the CO2 sink. Okay, so if that inherently means that there's more biomass in the world, right? That's an inherent assumption of the model.
well, I think the model isn't correct because if there's always a sink as CO2 goes up, then it's not really going to have a sustained period of being higher because then it would just have more of the biomass to sink it. But clearly, it stays
No, no,
up for
no.
a while.
Some of it goes into the atmosphere, but the point is that the lion's share of extra stuff goes to other processes, including more biomass, which means more life.
Okay, but in that process, then you would see again that most of it would be going down over time
What do you mean?
because there would just be more. Because if it says the biosphere gets bigger and bigger, there'd be more and more stuff to take in the carbon.
Right? Yeah,
And you wouldn't
but
see
but
I
you're
carbon
you're
don't.
just
adding
going up.
you're adding more to the cycle that used to be locked up in the ground. So this stuff used to be locked up in the ground. That was a carbon sink, and these carbon sinks have over time created climate catastrophes, as in the case in certain geological periods where huge oil forming regions are followed by very uh, desertified regions where there wasn't very much life, where it just becomes like sandstone because the CO2 was taken out by these sinks. So you're taking these sinks and you're putting them into the air. That makes it more CO2 overall. But anyway, it's a very straightforward process. Gilbert Salgado says the oceans are unable to absorb excess carbon. Well, not all of it. They absorb part of it. The biosphere absorbs part of it, and part of it just goes into more CO2 being in the air. That's that's the process that's happening. We're seeing more CO2 in the air, which leads to more biomass.
Is there a correlation? Is there a correlation between CO2 and heat, like the global temperature rise? Because I've seen
I haven't actually I haven't looked into it
graphs
myself.
showing.
It seems to me likely that it is. I mean, this is a very long-standing idea that there is a slight greenhouse effect from CO2 in the air. So my prior says, yeah, probably that's true. I'd be surprised if it wasn't true at all. As far as the degree of warming, that's where there's a lot of open questions.
One thing that is, yeah, one thing that is even more interesting is that the CO2 levels have been a lot higher than it is now and before.
Yeah, and those
Even
times were
though
warm though,
humans
weren't
didn't
they? Weren't those
exist
times warm?
or we had no cars.
what I've heard, I've heard the claim
Yeah,
that
exactly.
that they were
So
warm, that the CO2 level were caused by it being warm as opposed to the other way around. I'm not sure. I mean,
yeah,
I
exactly. That's if you hold a Coca-Cola, you know what happens with the CO2 when you have a closed bottle of Coca-Cola or a can, and then the sun
well, it's
shines
not
on it.
about
What happens? It explodes, right?
well, yeah,
That's
like
because you release the CO2.
the saturation level of CO2 in water goes up as you reduce the temperature, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. That's what we know, but I don't think we can prove the other way around. I don't know.
yeah. I mean,
So that's
I just don't
interesting.
see I don't see a really compelling reason
I believe
to
it's a
disbelieve
natural
it.
cycle.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
and
I
in
just
my
believe
opinion,
it's a natural cycle, you know.
it almost doesn't. To me, it's not significant, given that I don't think that the effects of warming or the effects of more CO2 in the air are so
Yeah.
deleterious as to justify the reorganization of our entire industrial base on the basis of those supposed effects. But yeah, I don't like my position right now is that I think that the scientists are right about the warming, because I view it as fundamentally plausible, and it should be fairly simple to calculate that yeah, it'll have some effect to have this greenhouse thing. I mean, it's just a particle in the air which which uh, uh, which reflects more backwards, right? Because it's more resonant to infrared than to visible. So that should just be a straightforward effect, right?
Right.
I mean, obviously the problem is feedback cycles and stuff, but it should have some effect, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'd characterize the climate in this way. Oh, there's always an equilibrium CO2 concentration in the air. That equilibrium concentration is determined by the equilibrium temperature, um, which is determined by the amount of solar radiation and other forcing functions, essentially that control the climate of the Earth, and and that equilibrium of CO2, I guess, is also affected by the fact that a shift in the equilibrium CO2 will result in a shift in the greenhouse effect,
Yeah.
which will in turn affect the temperature. But at the end of the day, the equilibrium CO2 concentration is basically just a function of external of solar conditions and what's going on in our orbit and with the sun itself. And what we're doing is not going to change that. We've caused CO2 to go somewhat out of equilibrium just by creating just by releasing a ton of CO2, and that is resulting in a temporary warming, and all of that is likely to go away in a few centuries as CO2 returns back to equilibrium.
But will it? Would you expect it to return back to equilibrium, or will we release more and more of it as industrial civilization ramps up?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that we figure out a way to continue dig, digging deeper and deeper for more fossil fuels as we ramp up industrialization and we continue to keep CO2 levels out of equilibrium. But I don't think there is any pressing concern about having to address climate change now to avert
Agreed.
permanent
And one thing to keep in mind
catastrophe.
is like the plausibility of positive feedback loops. If positive feedback loops were such a thing, then when the Earth was so diametrically different from now, it should have locked it into a feedback loop when it was really, really far from the climate, either in the cold direction or in the hot direction. So if it was a positive
Right.
feedback
I
loop
mean,
system, it should have gone off the rails at that point. But
yeah.
apparently, it returned
It's
back to a sort of
obviously
mean.
a negative feedback loop system. It's just that the level of negative feedback might be somewhat attenuated by the fact that increased temperatures result in a shift in equilibrium CO2 concentrations.
Right. Do you think that the economy is going to decarbonize just naturally from the hard claim, the claim that would really help the left the most would be that battery is going to evolve to the point where we don't need carbon anymore, just from our renewable sources. Is that plausible? But then secondarily, is nuclear going to take over?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of that is plausible. I'm not sure it's practical. I think we just doing anything is a lot easier with fossil fuels, and not just energy, but the creation of hydrocarbon-based products like plastics and whatnot is far easier with fossil fuels, and so I don't really see us completely re-architecting our our industry to be completely carbon free
Well, the
unless
ceiling
we
is a
have
lot
to,
higher
and I
for
don't think we have
renewables and
to.
nuclear in terms of overall energy output. You can get to a much higher ceiling if you're using that than if you're using carbon sources, because the theoretical limit is a lot
Yeah,
higher.
yeah,
Avocado
yeah,
says the
and I
problem is
think
that
that that
humans
could
did
be
not
the
evolve under high
potential.
CO2 circumstances, especially our modern civilization. Well, Avocado, keep in mind that the indoors CO2 concentrations are like 10 times higher often, and we don't seem to be much discomfited by that. Although I've seen arguments that
Yeah,
it yeah, but so yeah, our resilience to high carbon environments is much higher than the theorized resilience of the biosphere by the
yeah.
global alarmists.
If you live indoors without having constantly open windows in every room, uh, or you drive in a car without keeping the windows down or keeping the fan on high, you are living under very high CO2 concentrations yourself. And humans as a species actually evolved during one of the warm periods in between the glacial periods. So it's actually warm temperatures seem to be good for humans.
Right. Um, yeah, we're much more bounded by low temperatures than by high temperatures. Right? Like it's a way bigger
Right,
problem for there to be lower temperatures than higher temperatures, even from an energy perspective, right?
right.
Like it's vastly more
And one of the
expensive to
things to
heat.
consider is kind of right now we don't have sufficiently good modeling to know when to start expecting the next so-called ice age to start happening. But there is a possibility that had we not created CO2, we would already be seeing dropping temperatures. Um, and
Right.
if there's even a small chance of that,
Like
it
our
might
overall
actually be
geological circumstances are that we're in the midst of an ice age, which is
yes,
vastly
yes,
extremely destructive to the
yes,
carrying capacity of Earth.
yes. And so it might be prudent to proactively pump out CO2 and kind of forestall the onset of another glacial period.
Did you hear about the bioshaping attempts or the geoengineering attempts from fish seeding? So you can put like iron into the earth, iron sulfide into the iron sulfide into the sea, and thus increase fish stocks and cause a carbon sink from the algae. That's an interesting idea to me.
I I have not heard of this, but it sounds like cool. It sounds really cool, and it would
Some
be
guy did
nice
it, and apparently it like
to
tripled or
increase fish
doubled the
stocks again.
fisheries. It tripled or doubled the fisheries, but it was like he was attacked by the environmental regulation people in Canada, and basically that shut down the project. But yeah, I thought that was one of the coolest ideas.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool, and I think it does kind of sadden me that uh, the levels of fish and whales and just creatures in general in the ocean it is so much lower today than it was 100 or 200 years ago.
Right. Yeah, yeah. That is a fairly big tragedy, and yeah, restoration of fisheries would be good. I'd also like some sort of overfishing tax, right? Like a it should be more and more expensive to fish as fisheries become more overstrained, and then it should be less expensive as fisheries become replenished. And the problem is that
Right, right.
that pragmatism is
And
sort of
there's a
undermined by environmentalists.
yeah, absolutely agree, and I think environmentalists definitely poison the well for reasonable conservation efforts.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it is a real yeah a real tragedy in terms of lost potential. Let's see the stream chat. What does it say? Massive Testosterone is talking about not wanting to come on stream. I'm sure you'll come on eventually, Massive Testosterone, and it'll be a glorious day when you do come on. Fletcher says, just don't say controversial stuff on stream. Yeah, that's the strat, bro. That's a strat. Or you could come on under a pseudonym, and I wouldn't even know that it's you. No one would know that it's you. They wouldn't even know that it's high testosterone. They wouldn't know that your testosterone is high. They would think it could be a low testosterone person. AGOBot says, wouldn't a warmer Earth mean more uninhabitable land near the equator? Well, probably not, because more CO2 means it's easier to grow crops in dry areas, because crops are more resilient. They need to sacrifice less in transpiration for the same unit of photosynthesis. And also, like, if you just think about things like very broadly from 10,000 feet, like tropical areas are not, they're often lush. They can be deserts, but they're also often very, very lush places. And so, like, we're not temperature limited, right? The temperature limit comes on the cold side, not the hot side. It has to get a lot hotter for it to be impossible to sustain life due to average temperature. The issue is when the average temperature is not kept, like, regulated by a large thermal mass in the form of like a lot of wet mass. So wet mass makes it so that the temperatures don't change so drastically, and that makes it so that any area in the world is livable if there is that regulation of temperature. If it's desert, though, then there are these really wide swings from like ice cold to burning hot, and it's because it's completely dry. Massive Testosterone says, just worried about voice associated with Wignat space. Yeah, I mean, I get it. But remember, you could just get a crappy mic, and then it would be very hard to get anything out of that. Let's see. Oh, we have Discord debates. Thunberg is a Swede. Tell your Swedes to get out of my country. Aspergas. Ginga. The real question, the real Ginga red pill is, Ginga, what's your background? Ginga, what's your 23andMe? That's the big question here. Avocado says, temperature limits are irrelevant to contemporary humans. We can adapt to a very wide variety of temperatures. Agreed. Just going to mess with our quality of life depending on our lifestyle accoutrements. But why would it...
Are you talking about my...
Yeah. I'm asking you, bro. What's your full...
talking in the chat or repeat voice?
What's your full 23andMe?
75% Swede and 25%... I haven't done a DNA test, but I know it's certainly that. I'm 75% Swedish and 27% Danish.
Oh, nice.
So I'm full Northern European.
You're a Nordic. Yeah. You're a Nordicist. You're a Viking.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you eat cod liver oil?
Well,
hey, did you eat cod liver oil? Do you eat cod liver oil?
No.
Why not?
No.
That's how the Vikings took over, was cod liver oil. Before cod liver oil, they'd have rickets because of a lack of vitamin D, but then they managed to catch the cod, and that saved them.
Potatoes. I eat potatoes. I eat pasta. I eat meatballs. I eat meat.
And no cod liver oil.
Yeah.
Do you eat surströmming?
I eat IKEA food, you know.
Do you eat rotten fish?
Is it true that Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish aren't really individual languages, but just national groupings of dialects that are all really dialects of the same language family?
Yeah, Swedish and like Sweden, Norway, and Denmark and Iceland, I believe too, are like the languages we can understand each other. But I wouldn't count with Iceland. I would say Norway, Danish, and Swedish. These are the countries that understands each other most well. Norway is more similar to Swedish than Danish is to Swedish. And the Danes can understand Swedes better than we can understand them for some weird reason.
Massive Testosterone is challenging me in the chat. He says, rickets is vitamin C, not D. You're wrong, bro. It's vitamin D. I just looked it up. And it says vitamin D deficiency. and they ate lime for vitamin C, not cod liver. Well, that would be true. Yeah, lime is for vitamin C, but cod liver oil is for vitamin D, and that's why they survived these dark nights. It still made them depressed and generally hard to get along with because of their seasonal depression, but they did survive because of their cod liver oil. That's why they're here to talk to us
Was I
in Discord today.
answering your question? Turn.
I'm sorry, I got distracted by the chat.
Sure.
So
Did I answer your
Yeah.
question
Yeah, you
properly?
did.
Yeah, thanks. Like I said in chat, I have many thoughts in my head, but sometimes I have trouble explaining them in English without sounding like a retarded Mexican who can't learn English. Yeah, I know.
how did you learn English?
Um,
Why did you learn English?
yeah, I know. No, I'm good at understanding English. I'm always better at understanding English than speaking it.
Yeah, that's very normal. Yeah, it's easier to
Yeah,
get
I
an
know.
understanding than to build your verbal acuity. But
Okay, your
but why did you
vocabulary.
what attracted you to the superiority of English speaking spaces, the Anglophone superiority? How did you realize that the Anglophones will rule the world
What?
and are ultimately better than anyone else?
What are you talking about? Anglophones?
Anglophones,
Huh.
English speakers, yeah.
An English-speaking person.
Yeah.
Why is anything worth saying always said in English these days?
Why it is in English? From what I've learned at school, it's because the Brits went out and sailed and took over many countries and had imperialism. But I'm not 100% sure.
It's more because
why?
of the generalized Anglophone superiority. No, I think it's just the largest European language community, like by a long shot. America's rise really solidified that. So even before America's rise, England was really important, but then you add America to that, and you add Canada and Australia and New Zealand and all these English-speaking spaces, and it just becomes the overwhelmingly dominant European language.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
But isn't it the first spoken and the first superpowers of continents who becomes the main language in the
no,
for
I don't think so. I
example,
think that well, okay,
we have
if you
in
consider
the
America
Middle
part of that
Eastern,
process, if you consider America part of that process, then yes. But if
I
not,
mean
then
the-
no. I
I
think
mean
the crucial
main
thing is
language
just
in Middle East
Go ahead.
isn't that Arabic?
So, I think one curious thing is how well English-speaking countries have done relative to others. There seems to be a strong correlation between adoption of English and success, and it's hard to disentangle that from being colonized by England. But I think there's a question about whether South America and Africa would have been more successful had they been colonized by England instead of other European powers.
I think they definitely would have been. It's like access to markets and scientific communities and all that sort of thing. It's very valuable to have a common language. I think it really helps India that they have that English background and they can talk, you know. I mean, it makes it a lot easier to outsource to India, right? That's why that Indian outsourcing thing is a thing in the first place.
Yeah, and I think if you look at Africa, two of the most successful countries there are Nigeria and South Africa, which are English speaking.
Yep, for sure. All right.
I just want to say good night
Hey, good night, mate.
and
You
have
can come on if you like.
a good continued stream.
Thank you, bro.
Have a really nice time on the stream.
Have a good night. Sleep as much as you can, bro. Sleep is good for you.
Speaking.
Sleep is good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, greetings
night.
from
Good
Jinja. Greetings from the Swedish 17-year-old PewDiePie.
He's gonna be
And,
huge.
Pepe.
All Swedish
Yeah.
YouTubers are gonna be huge. All right.
Have a nice one.
Good night, bro. Let's see. I think we're going to be signing off pretty soon, folks. It's getting late, even where I am, let alone where the Swedes are. And I think we've just about exhausted the drama veins. Unless, Søren, do you have any topic you want to bring up before the stream ends? Anything interesting?
Nope. Nothing I didn't discuss on the last stream.
Awesome. Okay. Probably not gonna be able to stream tomorrow, but I might. And it was good having all you folks over here. Glad I could have just an organic discussion on the stream. That's my favorite streams, even if they're not the most viewership. I like to be able to just have organic discussions with people who are in my own Discord. I think that's probably the most sustainable way moving forward. And good night, everybody. Good night, all. Join the Discord. Great. All right. Signing off.
Hello?